So Tearlaments, what can I say about them that hasn't been said before? They're strong, I think everyone is aware of that by now. After all, between this and Sprite, the Doomsayers for Power of the Elements have been incredibly vocal. And well, maybe for once they're right. After all, if the only way to beat a Tier 0 deck is to become a Tier 0 deck yourself, that's not good news for anyone's wallet. But what does make Tearlaments so good? Well, they're basically a combination of the good parts of past mill-based archetypes like Chaos or Lightsworn, while being a lot more consistent to boot. They're also a fusion deck where everything can be made into basically everything else, so they're incredibly hard to stop. You could hand trap every one of their plays, only for them to activate the most basic form of fusion, Polymerization, from the hand, and still end on a full board. Also, on the subject of being a fusion deck, they basically steal a bunch of boss monsters from other fusion archetypes like Dragostapellia from Predaplants and Winda from Shaddolls. Oh, and for good measure they also steal Toad, just to make sure that card gets banned. And why not throw in a Baronne to your end board as well? Wait, a Baronne, I hear you ask? Why yes, thanks to Visas Starfrost. Now I know it seems like a lot of people are dropping that card, but I'd like to take a moment to defend it. First off, most of your Tearlaments don't really do anything if you're forced to just normal summon them. You'd need to find something else to send them to the graveyard to get their fusion effects off, which might mean that you just kind of remain on the field useless. Visas Starfrost fixes that by blowing up anything you don't need on the field, summoning himself while triggering their effects. Then he just so happens to be a level 6 tuner, which is perfect for the level 4s of this deck to make a Baronne, which, you know, is a pretty good card. It's also searchable thanks to their field spell, meaning you can actually pull this off pretty consistently. It also searches Tearlament monsters, but those are usually better milled than in your hand, so it's not really a problem to search Visas instead. At worst, you could always just run one, so that you have the option to search him if he'd be useful. All in all, I think cutting him completely from the deck is perhaps a bit hasty, but you can decide for yourself once you see the combos. But before we get into those, we should have a look at the deck. Here's my version of the deck. I'm going to be honest, with a deck under such intense scrutiny as this and Sprights, this likely isn't the perfect build, since the meta is going to evolve around it. And so, by the time people have adapted to this, and then this deck evolves in return, it will probably look a fair bit different to this. However, I can at least explain my choices so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to change things up. First up, the thing that a lot of people seem to not be doing is running Visas Starfrost. I already explained why this card is actually pretty good, but even if you weren't convinced by the reasons I gave, I still think you should try it out one with a Baronne in the extra deck. It will come up, I promise. After that, I'm running 3 of each Tearlament. Why? Well, it's a mill deck, so you want to be able to mill them as reliably as possible. Not to mention that having Havness at 3 means that you're more likely to be able to start playing on your opponent's turn, and so if your mills are more consistent, it might translate into something actually strong. Rhino Heart is also at 3 because it's one of the few cards worth normal summoning in the deck. Even when you normal summon it, you do get its effect to send something, and then if it gets sent to the graveyard later on, you still get its special summon, so you're not losing out on anything other than a normal summon that you might not otherwise use. It's also a water level 4, so together with the next card, it's important for making Toad. The second of Bahamut Shark's materials is Supreme Sea Mare. It's also the other normal summon of the deck. It sends an Aqua monster on summon, so it's a great combo starter that can be converted into a strong boss monster later on. Then of course there's a Shaddoll package of 3 Squamata and 1 Beast. Running less than 3 Squamata means you're a lot less likely to be able to mill it and make a Winda, plus it gets Beast in the graveyard for a free draw. Then there's the Trick Clowns. They're pretty optional, I will admit, but they give you free level 4 Xyz materials for a Redoer or an Abyss Dweller. Skip it if you want, but you're less likely to end on a random level 4 after all of your combos are done if you run this, not to mention it does help chain blocking as well. King of the Swamp is a neat card because you can either add Poly to your hand to make a fusion while triggering the graveyard effects of your Tearlaments, but also it has the neat bonus of being a fusion substitute, letting you make some interesting fusions like Millenniumize Restrict or Invoke Kaliga. After that, there's a few one-offs, which are kind of optional but also individually very strong. Instant Fusion has a ton of options we'll be seeing soon, including Kit Kalos. Terraforming adds their field spell, Call By is good for the mirror match and against Sprights to stop Toad when it tributes itself. And then Foolish Burial just gives you another layer of freedom if you draw it. For their own cards, run 3 of the field spell because of its great searching and its destruction effect. Then I like a ratio of 2 Salic and 1 Meta Noise. Salic gives you a negation and combos well with Kaleido Heart, plus it's a search when milled. Meta Noise can interrupt combos, but more importantly lets you start a fusion on your opponent's turn. But it does have a less desirable mill effect, so it's fine to run at 1 and search it if you want to use it. Finally, 3 Dark Ruler allows you a better chance at going second, which will be very important in this coming format. For the extra deck, I ran 1 Kaleido Heart and 2 Kit Kalos. You probably won't make Kaleido Heart going first unless you'll be ending with a set Salic, so 1 is fine. But for Kit Kalos, even if you'll often be returning it to your extra deck, you want a second copy just in case the first one gets banished or something like that. Guardian Chimera makes Poly a really strong option when going second. You won't be able to make this with the graveyard effects of your monsters since it requires monsters on the field and hand. 2 Dragostapellias and 2 Windas are good, since they're integral to your board without being as easy to recycle as the Tearlaments. Then for the named material fusions you'll make with King of the Swamp, you have Kaliga to lock down your board even further, or Millenniumize to be a different type of negate as well as an instant fusion target. You might not make these too often, but they're nice options to have. For your one and only Synchro, just run Baronne. It's pretty easy to make in this deck as long as you're running a Visas Starfrost, so it's going to be worth the inclusion. For the Xyzers, Time 332 is basically here to make up for the fact that the deck can't make Beatrice very easily. By making it with Shiren or Rhino Heart, you can then detach the materials as effects instead of as a cost to trigger their graveyard effects on demand. A Hamlet Shark is possible to make, so of course you run it and a Toad. And then finally, Abyss Dweller shuts down the mirror match very easily. So that's the deck. Now let's watch some test hands to see it in action. Right, combo time. But first, if you've been enjoying this video so far, make sure to like it and subscribe. Now I'm going to be honest, Tearlaments are a very hard deck to play. It's not so much that the combos are complicated, although they kind of are since they're completely non-linear and depend on what you mill, but also you need to keep track of which main deck Tearlaments you've milled for their graveyard effects so that you know how many fusion options you have left. All this to say that these might not be absolutely optimal, but you'll get to see what kind of boards you can build despite that. Here we'll be starting with the field spell to search Visas. Then normal Mare to send a Merly. We'll fuse with the other one in your hand for Kit Kalos. She'll add Shiren to hand, and then get destroyed by Visas for his summon. That triggers a mill of Rhino Heart, Shadow Beast, and a fusion. We fused a Kit Kalos in our graveyard into a Dragostapellia, summon the Rhino Heart while discarding the Shiren, and draw a Dark Ruler. With the Shadow in our graveyard, we can send a Havnis, who still has its fusion effect left. That uses Beast to make a Winda, and then we can just Synchro summon into Baronne. This leaves us with an Omni Negate, a targeted negate that reduces levels to 1, which is very useful against Sprights, and Winda's Floodgate. We also have both of our traps, with Rhino Heart as a target for Salic's effect, giving us another negate and the ability to play on our opponent's turn. This time we'll start with the search of the field spell again, but since we have a Visas, we can get to Merly instead. Then King of the Swamp searches Poly. Merly can summon itself to mill, which hits a Rhino, who summons itself while discarding Salic, and then Salic searches Shiren. Rhino Heart then sends Havnis, who fuses into Kit Kalos and searches Shiren. Once again, Visas blows up Kit Kalos, who manages to mill a Beast. After summoning Shiren and getting her mills, we can use Poly to make a Kaleido Heart, triggering a fusion into Winda, and topping it off with a Synchro summon into a Baronne. Since we have a set Salic, we'll be able to send Kaleido Heart to the graveyard to negate something, and then Kaleido Heart will trigger to summon itself back, shuffle something into the deck, and then start all of your mills. In this hand, we start by Foolish Burialing Rhino Heart. It summons itself by sending Merly, and then they both trigger, making a Kaleido Heart and sending Havnis to make a Kit Kalos. That lets us search an unused Tearlament so that we can trigger it with Poly and Kit Kalos by fusing them into Dragostapellia. We get a ton of mills, allowing us to go into Winda and search a Havnis. Now if your opponent manages to out Winda, we'll be able to start playing all over again thanks to Kaleido Heart and Havnis in our hand. This time we have instant fusion, so we can make a Millenniumize to protect our plays. Foolish Burial a Squamata to send a beast and get a draw. Then we can summon Shiren, discarding Swamp King to mill and fuse into Kit Kalos. With that we add a Meta Noise before destroying it with Visas. The mill 5 triggers both Rhino Heart and Trick Clown, giving us 2 more level 4 materials. The trap adds another Rhino Heart, and then the one on the field sends a Havnis to fuse into Dragostapellia. After synchroing into Baronne, we haven't actually normal summoned yet, so we can just get out the Rhino Heart in our hand. With 2 level 4 waters, we go Bahamut into Toad. Then, since Shiren is around but hasn't used its effect, destroy it with your own Baronne so that we can end our board with a Winda. This means we have a summon limiting Floodgate, 2 Omni Negates, a targeted negate, and even a Dark Ruler for backup. So that's the deck. Will you try out Visas Starfrost in Tearlaments? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Special thanks to my tier 3 patron, Distran, as well as my tier 2 patrons, Jason Murat and Violet Rain. The link to that is in the description. Thanks for watching!